Hello from Jerusalem. This is the second part of conversation with retired Brigadier General Uzi Eilam on Watchmen Talk, a series of conversations with Israel's security and military experts and practitioners. And I'm Amir Oren. In our first conversation, we dealt with the 1950s and 60s in the Israeli Defense Forces. You were there as once a Secretary of State regarding the Cold War said, present at the creation. You were there when the new modern Israeli Defense Forces with fighting spirit, with ingenuity, with creativity was born under Chief of Staff Dayan and Major Lieutenant Colonel Arik Sharon in the mid-50s. But then you studied mechanical engineering. You went on reserve duty. You came back to the career army, and you had a contingency duty in addition to your R&D job as the battalion commander of paratroops in the Battle of Jerusalem. So just to cap up the story of how the old city of Jerusalem was won by 3 brigades, one of which was your own, the 55th Reserve Paratroop Brigade. What happened when you went into the old city and you didn't have your trumpet, but you found a way to show the world your skills?
Well, one word about Chief Rabbi in the day before we went into the old city, and this is that he was with us, and he told me that his mother is buried in the Mount Scopus and Mount of Olives, and he didn't mention the old city at all. But I promised him that once we are there, I will take him with me and lead him to find the tomb of his mother. And the only soldier who asked me to be the first to enter into the city was the A Company Commander Yoram Zamush. Now, I told Botagur, there is one of my soldiers, my company commanders, and he wanted to be the first to get into the old city. And Mota said, okay, I believe that he didn't understand what I was talking about.
It was unthinkable at the time that, first of all, Jordan will join the fight that Israel had with Egypt, and even so, that it will not be only an exchange of fire between the two directions in the divided city of Jerusalem, and that you will actually penetrate the old city.
So what happened is that Wednesday, 10 o'clock in the morning, Motagur is on the air saying that we had the permission to get into the old city and all the battalion to the Lions Gate. And I was on the top of the hills surrounding Jerusalem. So I told Yoram Zamush, go. And I'm taking part of my battalion with my deputy to the Dung Gate, and the other half with me to Lions Gate, and we got into the old city, Mota the first, and then we are there. And we had enough time to settle down and see what is happening. The Israeli flag was already hovering at the end of the
Wailing Wall.
Yeah, up there, and I was asking Igor to his permission to let me go and find the wall, and we are there, the first. And then I got a radio saying that Rabbi Goren is entering the Luggage with my B company. So I said the soldiers to bring the Rabbi Ganon to us, and he was with us, excited. He didn't know what he's saying. He took one small Psalms book and said, "This is given to Lieutenant Colonel Uzi Eilam, the liberator of the old city." And I said, "Rabbi, I'm major, I'm not." He said, "You will be the lieutenant colonel, you will be colonel, you will be the general, you will go." And then he was taking his shofar and trying to blow the shofar, and he couldn't because it was so
He was
exciting.
overwhelmed with emotion.
So I told him, "Rabbi, I'm playing the trumpet, please give me the shofar." And I was holding the shofar. 3 different sons.
So, which only goes to show you that Israel did not plan this either occupation or liberation, depending on your point of view, of East Jerusalem and the entire West Bank at all. Events
It was
took
only
the turn.
yeah.
So, following this climax of the Six-Day War, you went back to your R&D job. You also were a brigade commander in the Jordan Valley. And later on, as a brigadier general, you were put in charge of the entire research and development effort of the military, and then much later on, of the entire defense establishment. And you also wrote about it quite a lot. What is Israel's secret technologically? What made it so advanced, so fast, and before other nations of similar size understood that this is the way to go?
I think that one of the very, very important development from the beginning, even parallel to this fighting spirit, we did not have any chance of getting support from the big copies. French were helping primarily when the Egyptian, with Nasser, heading by Nasser, were supporting Algeria. But then they stopped. And President de Gaulle was furious after we won the Six-Day War, and there was a sort of...
Against his advice.
Yeah. And we suffered from the French strategy. We suffered from the British strategy, and the United States did not decide to get into it. So we have, on the other side, we have all the Russians. Technology helping Egypt, Syria, Iraq.
So it's really necessity being the mother of invention?
Just necessity, plain necessity. And then, because we have such a menacing force against us, we have to use all our traits.
But there is also something else. Take your own case. You were a fighting arms officer. You took part in actions which in other militaries, perhaps 4, 6, 10 different officers have a chance to participate in. And then as an engineer, you also had a career, and you combined the both by being both a developer and a user. And this is a very unique combination. You don't find it in many other places.
This completely true. And I think that combining the battlefield with the technology is a win-win. And later on, years later on, when we have a special course of technology genius, Talpiot, I introduced the idea of letting some of these Talpiot students to go first, be fighters, be leaders of
Just to explain what this course is, usually Israeli youth enlist at 18. Some of them can go on reserve officer training course by earning their degrees in professions which are needed by the military. Then they serve their obligation plus some years as career officers. What you are referring to is that some very bright youngsters, rather than studying medicine or engineering, went on special classes along with academic institutions and developed their skills so that they were later developers, inventors. They mastered technology for the practical purposes of the military.
yeah. And then my first book that you are holding, The Secret of Israel Power, in Hebrew, is being given to these youngsters when they finish the studying. And this is what is really interesting to see the merge of spirit fighting and technology. And everyone is getting this book with my signature, and they know better than other ways how to combine these two elements.
Well, it's already a generation, at least, since it started, and some of its graduates are already senior officers in the R&D administration.
Exactly.
Now, in 1976, Yitzhak Rabin, your chief of staff during the 1967 war, was the prime minister. And you were offered the job of Director General of the Atomic Energy Commission, reporting directly to the prime minister. And this was unique because you were the first general, rather than a civilian scientist, to be offered this job. How did that come about?
I didn't believe my ears when I was in his office, and he says, Uzi, we think that you should take this job. And I looked.
If there is another Uzi. So many Uzis.
And but then I told him, look, Prime Minister, I have to refresh my physics and my mathematics. And I have to go through a sabbatical in order to be prepared to the job. And he agreed. So I did not go right away from being in uniform to be a civilian, but in addition to be his advisor for energy. This was my title. I got to the university, Tel Aviv University, and I was professor to teaching technology. And this is something that brought me much easily into this area of being the head of the Atomic Energy Commission. It was fascinating area, and with a lot of development. And
how much power does the Director General of this commission have? In addition to advising decision-making bodies, do you run the facilities, the research centers? What do you actually do as Director General of Atomic Energy?
Two very, very known centers. There's one of Sorek Center and one of Dimona Center, but there was some other units not so popular, not so known. And being the Director General is not just to come once a year to Vienna and talk to the IAEA, but also to lead, to command all of the activity, and I found all of the prime ministers that followed Rabin, Begin, Shamir, and then Shimon Peres, that they were listening to me. One area that Begin, Prime Minister Begin, did not listen to me was concerning the Iraqi research center.
At that time, you, along with the heads of Mossad and military intelligence, objected to Begin's idea of attacking the reactor. You did not think that it was totally necessary, that it was the right time.
Premature.
It was premature. So what did you think Israel should have done?
I felt that first and foremost, the Mossad could find more elements of attacking and giving and holding the Iraqis for going on.
You
And I
mean
knew
sabotage in Europe or in Iraq itself?
both. And then Rabin, I was invited to the sessions of the government, and I was fully convinced that I should tell them what I think. After a few sessions of this,
Begin stopped inviting you.
he asked his military assistant, Begin asked his military assistant to tell me not to come again to the government session. I did not give up, and I was meeting one-on-one with the
ministers,
ministers.
who participated in this decision making.
And one I had once a week I had a meeting with Begin. In one of these meetings, he told me, "But Uzi, they were not there to attack this reactor, and they meant there was the elections that was coming, and of course the enemy was the
Labour Party.
Labour Party, and then the last who declined and decided to support Begin was Yadin, General.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Yep. And I came to his house in Caesarea, another house of the Caesarea of nowadays, and he told me humbly, I couldn't stand against
The pressure. Okay, so now here we are. We are marking 40 years since this attack on Iraq. Who was right in that debate?
Judging by the results, it's a story, a success story. But why say it openly? Why not leave it in a way that they would think that there was another attempt of
By the Iranians.
Iranian to attack? Why not remain without admitting that you are?
So there are two layers here. One is the mission itself, whether it was necessary or not, and the other is the public posture, coming out and doing it in the face, which later made Saddam Hussein launch his Scud missiles into Israel 10 years later. So there is a difference between the action and then the public bravado.
And even then, when the head of Mossad, Hofi, Haka, and myself, and the chief of intelligence, we told the prime minister that we should leave it vague. And he did not agree, partly because he thinks that this is the way and this is and we are right, and partly because of the elections that were coming by. back to another reactor, later on the Syrian reactor, and the decision was done by Ehud
Olmert.
We did not reveal, and it went quite nicely. So you can say, okay, the Air Force operation was outstanding, but the political side is debatable.
What is the lesson regarding the relationship between the professional echelon, military, scientific, intelligence, and the political echelon? Is Israel doing right by the way it is presenting recommendations and then the decisions can go the other way?
I would recommend everybody to look intently into the history of the way Prime Minister Begin was behaving. He should have fired Haka, he should have fired me, and he did not. And this is something that this is true leader.
You mean hear your advice, not take it, but then not acting against you personally, not ousting you and appointing people who will tell him what he wants to hear.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned that you went to the general sessions of the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna annually. And often then or at the UN, there are suggestions, proposals for a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East. And Israel always says, yes, fine, we are for it, but only after full peace comes. Is that a viable position?
Even today. You know, Dr. Eklund, Swedish, was for years the leader of the IAEA, and after the bombing of the Iraqi reactor, I came to him before everything was beginning. I had him as a visitor a few months before in Israel.
But not at Dimona.
No. And he looked at me and said, "Why did you do that to me?" And I was trying to explain that I was not the one who really decided, and they wanted...
There's a famous rhetorical question in Israeli folklore. Does a fisherman love fish? So apparently the Director General of the Atomic Energy loves atomic reactors. He doesn't want them to be hit.
Something like that. But we had to be given the American support in order not to be let out of the IAEA.
Were certain Israeli statesmen more privy, more understanding of the nuclear complex? We know that Shimon Peres was David Ben-Gurion's right-hand man when this enterprise started in the 50s, and he led it until the mid-60s. Rabin was a general and then chief of staff with other positions on this issue, mostly because he wanted conventional weapons for the IDF rather than investments in the nuclear arena. But Begin and Shamir, when they came to power, did not know the intricacies of the nuclear business. Did you see any result of that difference in backgrounds?
No, I don't. When we knew that Begin was about to enter into the office of Prime Minister, we prepared a heavy book like that with all of the wisdom. He didn't open it. Enough for him was a long session
briefing
with Rabin, private, much longer than 30 minutes.
And you were there too?
No, but I explained to Rabin what is written there to help Begin understand where to look for this wisdom. And then once a week we were there, and I think that that I earned the support and the way Begin was looking to me. For instance, when Hatikva
The national hymn.
got into big and Yuval Ne'eman was there, Begin called me and said, "Look, I'm going to enlist this new party, and what can we give Ne'eman in order to..."
The Ministry of Science.
Yeah. And so he was looking for me to support him with a political...
Did you?
Yes. But also, this was after the bombing of the reactor.
So, General Eilam, former Director General of the Atomic Energy Commission, do you still dream of atoms at night?
Of course.
Uzi Eilam, an accomplished author as well as a practitioner, an engineer, a fighter for many years with the Israeli Defense Forces and the Defense Ministry. Thank you very much for being with us on Watchmen Talk.
Thank you for listening to me.